it's weird to think, guys and girls, that we are officially a month removed, a full calendar month where there's been no NFL football. But April's almost one of the better months for football. Like for me, look, there's the league meetings going on right now. I didn't even realize this too till I heard a Mike Vrabel interview with Pro Football Talk today that the Patriots start OTAs on Monday. I thought that was closer to the draft. Oh, and then that wonderful thing, the draft's happening in
Yeah.
23 days. But who better to talk about all this stuff with than from 98.5 The Sports Hub in Boston, Alex Barth, recurring guest. Alex, how are we doing today, pal?
I'm doing good. Like you said, it's April. It's draft month. Here we go. It's on. And then it's summer. So it's all good. It's all good here.
It is, it is. But before we get into anything else with you, just wanted to ask because, like, look, I know obviously when you first got into covering this team, it's like right at the height of the sixth Super Bowl to what we've seen over the last. Because the last time you and I spoke was about a year ago, I believe.
Probably, yeah.
So, what has been just the difference of having to? And I know I've done this too from talking to other reporters within the team, but from your perspective, how is the vibe? Not even then to now, but like, what's the consensus just been like over the last year to what you've even seen from, let's say, March 24 to now, but then even from January to now? Like, has there been a real momentum shift within the team, like from your point of view, or is it just, on to business, on to the next one? Last year's kind of a whitewash sort of football season.
It does feel like last year is in the rear view. And Mike Vrabel even talked about that the other day when it comes to the players. Like, we're going to evaluate guys moving forward. We're not going to evaluate guys based on the past. I think the idea is it's the start. Last year is supposed to be the start of a new era, and that obviously didn't happen. And I think part of the reason is because they were still kind of committed to the idea that it was the start of a new era. They wanted the passing of the torch without actually passing the torch kind of thing between Belichick and Mayo. This is clean break, new start. For better or worse, it's all new. And you see them moving on from guys like David Andrews and Juwan Bentley on the roster. You see them moving on from guys like Mike Pellegrino on the coaching staff. It's all new. It's, even if there were things from before that maybe worked, nope, we got to start this thing from the ground up to get going.
So yeah, that's my big thing too. Like, I know, and I started saying this with David Andrews. I feel like, how quiet quitting is a term now in society. I feel like for David Andrews, it's kind of like a quiet retirement, where it's, hey, like it doesn't like that's the vibe I get. I don't know if he is going to play again or not, but it just seems always like, he's going to retire, but there's no official, announcement, roses and all that stuff. Meanwhile, with Juwan Bentley, I said this when Vrabel came in. I had a feeling that someone of big stature in the organization or a name was going to get cut or traded and people weren't going to be happy about it. And that was a Juwan Bentley one. I also do wonder if there's something there, not football related, but more injury related,
That's definitely a possibility. And I think with Andrews too, right? Those are guys that you can't exactly sit them out as long as they're healthy. And at the center position, especially with Andrews, right? You're not necessarily going to be able to evaluate where he's at just because of how little contact there is in NFL training camps. And so, all right, you're going to roll with him into September. And then if he's not healthy, well, now whoever's stepping in for him isn't prepared because it's been Andrews with that group all summer. So I think there is an element, again, of like, we're not going to be tied to the past. We're moving forward. We need people, not just who want to move forward. I think David Andrews was all aboard on Vrabel and McDaniels and that, but also just being able to move forward with that, whether that be because of injury, whether that be because of a stylistic fit, whether that just be because of mentality. They want guys who are 100% able to throw themselves into what they're trying to build.
Yeah, I completely agree with you on that. My other thing with Andrews too was I always thought there was a chance that he starts training camp and then realizes, you know what, hey, I'm too old for this. I'm too hurt. I'm too old. I'm just gonna go, fish, like raise my kids, like be with my wife, do all that stuff because. And I said the quiet retirement thing because of how he's still involved at the building because there was that draft party that they did, I believe it was at somewhere in Gillette Stadium a couple weeks ago with like, him, the McCourtys, Brian Hoyer because of the podcast and all that stuff. So that's where I feel like, hey, he's still going to be there, but not, football capacity. He'll still be there in like that, like how, for example, you get at every single sporting event, there's always alumni that roam around. I'm sure Bruins games get it, Red Sox games, etc. We get it up here in Toronto too with players. But the one big thing too that I feel like I really like this year as well, actually just came out today. Bill Parcells being the newest inductee into the into the Patriots Hall of Fame, getting his red jacket. I feel like there's a lot of people out there who are younger who don't understand the true impact that he had. I know he was, and look, I say this all the time, read the book if you want to know all about it or go back and watch the videos, but it's my core belief of it is he walked so Bill Belichick could run. It's not like one made the other, because if you think about it, there's a chance right now that there's a team in St. Louis or Hartford that's, was once the New England
Yeah.
Patriots.
That's what I said earlier today, is obviously for the wins themselves, it's Belichick, it's Brady, it's those coaching staffs, it's those players.
Yeah.
But without Parcells and Bledsoe legitimizing it, look, I don't know that Kraft was ever going to really move the team to St. Louis. He bought the team to keep the team local, right? But who knows? And we know Hartford was on the table at one point, so you don't get you Brady and Belichick in another city might have gone on that run. Certainly. It might not be here. It might not be here if not for Bill Parcells and Drew Bledsoe.
No. So I know with Robert Kraft, he basically bought the team to keep them from I believe it was the Sullivan family from moving it to St. Louis, because I know there was it was plans like that. It was like, when the Springfield Isotopes became the Albuquerque Isotopes, it was like that was a wheels in motion plan to legitimately happen. Right. I know Hartford was a thing when they were trying to find new grounds for a stadium, which I'm trying to remember. I believe there was other places in Boston. I think eventually it was just, hey, we'll build right here. And the other thing that still weirds me out from the one time I got to go to the grounds was seeing that it wasn't even Gillette Stadium. That was originally supposed to be CGMI Stadium or CGMI Field. But then the company went bankrupt in the spring of 2002. So then in came Gillette Stadium.
Yes. I actually have a little CMGI Field trinket. I don't know what you want to call it. Something.
Yeah.
I have something that was given out at the time that said those are like collector's items up here. I think if I remember the story right, they had put, if you've been to Gillette, you know that there's like a Gillette Stadium logo on each seat. They'd either just been delivered or they'd actually placed the CMGI logos on every seat and then had to go through and redo it all. So those you'll see sometimes at memorabilia shows and stuff, those CMGI little placards floating around. That's not what I just have a thing that says it, but
no, that's so funny though. Even up until a couple of years ago when they did all the massive renovations with the Jays at the Rogers Center, you'd be looking at you'd see old plastic seats with the old D from the Sky Dome days on it and stuff like that too. So it's always funny when you find those little intricacies involved in stadiums. The other thing I just randomly remember too is that I don't know which direction it is, but the press box end zone or where the banners are now, that used to be a McDonald's in the concourse too, I believe.
That was an iconic McDonald's. Yes. Iconic McDonald's,
full restaurant and everything, not full restaurant, but full.
No,
menu,
it was. I don't remember. I think it was. It wasn't like you couldn't go inside. It was like a concession stand, like everything else. But yeah, it was a McDonald's.
Well, you know what?
And now that's all blown out, and it's like a really fancy bar, and come a long way.
The furthest I got to there was the DraftKings corner, right around section. I think where was I? Section 2.
Yeah, that's right. That's right next to it. I know where you're talking about. Yeah, you were right there.
That's where I sat for the game, and which I still have to say that's probably my favorite section to sit in, the 200s, just because you're up high enough, but you're not low enough to where you have a good view of the field. Look, right now with this team, there's a lot going on in the process of and I've been starting to say this too. I just want to get your thoughts on it. I feel like there's a huge not a why not us mentality, but there's not, and I don't want to say not a pressure to win, but there's they're essentially, I feel like going into the year playing with house money, where it's expectations are relatively low. The schedule is easier, because that's the thing I think a lot of people last year, where it's they went 4-13, and sure, there was a lot of winnable games, but this year when you look on the schedule, there's a lot of games where I'm like Tennessee, hey, we saw what they did last year, they should beat them. The New York Giants we don't know who at quarterback right now. I know Russell's the projected starter, but depending on when they play, you don't know. And they play the AFC and the NFC South and the AFC North, which it's always a toss-up to where, look, this year with the entire AFC East, the Jets, I need to see it. I need to see it. I can't buy into anything. I like Aaron Glenn as a head coach. I think he's the right guy, but I need to see it. Miami, you're an injury away from Zach Wilson being your starting quarterback, and Buffalo, I kind of just push Buffalo off to the side because look, they're number one, and then the rest is just it's a battle for 2, 3, and 4. Because until proven otherwise, we all know that they're doing the right thing, and also too, I kind of give them props for getting ahead of a lot of their contract stuff far in advance before they had to. So that's just where I view it with New England because I think, and I hate doing this at this time of the year because we don't know the schedule, we don't know the draft, but I feel like this team can get to at least 6 wins this year. Is that lunacy to say, or do you feel like that's right on the
No,
spot?
I mean, I think it's possible. Let's see who they have at left tackle. And
Yeah.
obviously, there's a way to go, but they have an easier schedule this year, especially at home. They got to start winning at home. And Mike Vrabel talked about that. He was asked about his goals for the team, and he mentioned winning the division. And the follow-up was like, year one, that's kind of lofty with where they are and where the Bills are. And he said, we got to win at home. If we start winning our home games, everything will kind of take care of itself. So there should be 4 or 5 wins at home. Can you take a couple on the road? Like if they go 500 at home, right? You need to find 2 road wins in 8 games to get to 6 wins. They should be able to do that.
Yeah, that because that's what I was thinking. Like their home schedule this year, they play Cleveland, they play Pittsburgh, the Giants, the Panthers, and the Falcons. Those are the 5 teams that are
Yes.
And who's the other one?
Is it Tennessee or do they go to Tennessee? I know they play Tennessee.
They go to Tennessee and Vegas comes to New England.
Okay, so Vegas is the other one.
Yeah, and also too,
winnable game. Should be a winnable game.
They can't go 500 at home this year because they have 9 games.
All right, even better. Win 5 and 9 then. Win 5 and 9 and now you're really cruising.
Yeah, because if you can win 5 at home, the road's still even to like Tampa, you don't know. I feel like Tampa and Atlanta, it's kind of a coin flip for whichever one's there, but then it's that Simpsons voice of get ready, everybody's prepared to do something stupid. That's how I always view the Falcons. Yeah. Saints, I think it's just look, they either have to go for it or they just have to rip it off and just be terrible for a few years, kind of like where we currently are, where the Giants currently are at this moment in time. And then where else do they go? They go to Tennessee, they play there, and then they go to Cincinnati and Baltimore, which is those. If they can steal one of those games, like, and I know everyone this year is like, oh, well, they lost to Cincinnati week 1, they'd have first overall. And I'm going to segue into that because I feel like with that first overall argument, if you don't trade the pick and take whoever's on the board, people are going to be mad. You don't get first overall, people are going to be mad. But I'm going to segue into a question too, because I've been starting to say this, and because look, right before you and I talked, there was the stuff from the combine stats and pro days with Dane Brugler breaking. My thing on Will Campbell is, and he had a really good point about this, is why is all of a sudden his arm length such an issue when you know the talent's there? I look at it as if you know he's going to be a dog at left tackle, and left tackle is a position of need, it's like this. It's like, you or I going to, and I know there's a lot of famous Massachusetts pizza spots in Boston that I see through you and your colleague Mike posting
Mike.
weekly. Yes, more Mike.
Cadlick.
But you know what I mean, though? It's like going to a pizza spot, but it's like, oh, I don't know Boston pizza spots off the top of my head outside of the
Town
city.
Spa.
But it's like saying, oh, I want Town Spa, and then you get to Town Spa, and it's like, no, actually, I want to go to Spa Town. It's like, okay, Will Campbell's right there for you. It's like, if the arms thing is such an issue, I understand it, but it's not like Will Campbell's going to be a Kwame Brown in like 5 years where you have Stephen A. Smith going on this, like, he's a bona fide scrub. He can't play. The man's got small arms. No, if you think he's a good enough left tackle, let him be at left tackle. That's my second straight Will Campbell TED Talk rant on this podcast.
Yeah, I think it's fair. Look, the arm length is a factor.
Yeah.
And let's not confuse talking about something with agreeing with something. It's a part of the conversation. I'm not going to sit here and say it's not. But can the guy play? Yes, he can. In another draft, you may weigh it more, right? If it's Will Campbell or Joe Alt, if Joe Alt was this year, it's Joe Alt, and it's no question. But that guy might not exist for the Patriots. Like if it's Abdul Carter, Travis Hunter, those guys are a step up. Their questions are significantly less weighing than Will Campbell's is. You still need to get a left tackle somewhere, but fine. I get it. You'd rather deal with Travis Hunter and having to figure out his position versus Will Campbell's length. Like, okay, fine. I can see that. But Armand Membu switching sides, which successfully going from right to left is also an extreme rarity in the NFL.
Yep.
Tyler Warren is older. He's a late breakout player. There's significant questions about his ceiling. Ashton Genty probably the best player on the board after Hunter and Carter, but he plays running back, positional value. You weigh that. Kelvin Banks, some people think he's a guard. Ted McMillan, not an elite athlete that you usually look for at the wide receiver position at that spot in the draft. So, I hate the whole, well, he's not worth the 4th pick in a draft. You're in this draft. You can't say, well, last year he would have gone this. Those players are not available. You can't just tell, as much as I wish they could, you can't just tell Roger Goodell, pencil us in for number 4 next year. We're good. We'll pass. Just give us number 4 next year. We'll take that. You have to take somebody in this year's draft. And assuming Hunter and Carter off the board, I 2 of the next 4 or 5 best players are tackles. In Will Campbell and Armand Membu, I'd put Genty in that conversation. I would put
do you put Tyler Warren?
Tyler Warren in that conversation. And then, we could talk about Mason Graham. We could talk about Ted McMillan. But, that's right. Tackles are right there. And at that point, you're asking, they need a tackle. Mike Vrabel said they need a tackle. And both of those guys can play. I think I've kind of come off as anti-Armand Membu during this process because it got so territorial, between Campbell or Membu, and it became teams.
Yeah.
You just have to ask yourself which outlier you're willing to bet on. Are you willing to bet on the guy whose arms, by the way, are long enough? They just hit that benchmark because we're not using the combine numbers because the NFL was wrong. And that applies across the board. It's not just with Will Campbell. Armand Membu got some real length in that conversation as well. But are you willing to take the risk on the guy who maybe doesn't have the prototypical reach for the position? Or are you going to take the risk on cross-training a guy when that, especially in recent history, has not worked out the heavy majority of the time? Either way, you're looking at a historical outlier. Or do you take Tyler Warren? Do you take Ted McMillan? Do you take Ashton Genty? And maybe you feel like the ceiling's not there, but you feel safer with that 2nd pick, taking a guy like a Josh Connolly or an Ariante Ursary, or even a Josh Simmons, who has his own tremendous red flag with that injury.
Yeah, that Josh Simmons is another name I was going to bring up too, the tackle from Ohio State. I completely agree with you on every single point you make. For some reason, for me, Tyler Warren just screams like he's going to be a New York Jet. I just don't know what it is. They need a tight end. Yeah, they need a tight end. Ashton Genty, look, for as great as a player he is, I just feel like that would be. You remember when the Steelers took Najee Harris in 21 and it was a question just because it's okay, you have other needs. That would be me. Ashton Genty would be a great player, but I'm like, look, the Patriots are fine. I'd rather, take a flyer on a day 3 guy because I'm in the belief that Kevin Harris is probably, not going to be on the roster in 2025. I think it's just, that was a draft pick. It didn't work out. You kind of just wipe your hands clean and move on from Kevin Harris. But because right now with running backs, you have Stevenson, who, look, I think it's just down year, hurt. There's just a bunch of factors there. Antonio Gibson, someone I liked from the jump, day 1 was good. But then, you grab what's his name? The running back from Kansas. I know you could probably grab early in the 4th or 5th round. Jayhawks, by the way. But no, so with going back to that point, because the way I look at the draft right now, Cam Ward's locked for number 1, especially too when the Tennessee Titans are bringing their production team to his pro day.
Yeah.
That's just that's not an obvious red. That'd be like, you and I playing poker and you get a great you get great cards. You pull a banner down, just says Alex has great cards. 2nd overall, I feel like, look, Cleveland's just going to basically hey, we gave Myles Garrett $40 million. We're going to pair you with another psychopath on the exact opposite side of your line and Abdul Carter. It feels like that way just because I honestly think Cleveland's going to take a swing and just either try to get someone late that works or even Will Howard day 2 in the draft for quarterback. Excuse me.
Or trade for Kirk Cousins. There's kind of some reporting out there right now about that. He has familiarity with the coaching staff, so I wouldn't rule that out either.
I wouldn't rule it out either. I just feel like once Atlanta paid him his signing bonus, I feel like it's kind of silly goosery for them to trade him. And also, it's a good insurance policy in case, hey, what if Michael Penix has a couple bad games out of the hop or, God forbid something were to happen, you have Kirk Cousins in the wings.
Unless Cousins doesn't want to be there.
That's the thing. That's the only thing.
Yeah.
Because I know
unless Cousins tells him you need to move me.
Yeah, because he went to Atlanta to, because his wife's from the area, all that stuff. And then the draft really starts at 3 because, look, the Giants can go with Hunter, look amazing, put up great fantasy numbers, but win 3 to 4 games again. Or even if you take Shador, there's not going to be that pressure to start, but there's that pressure of, hey, Dion only wants to coach one kid. Dion wants to coach Shador. So do you do that then where it's, hey, this, because if I still think this with the Patriots too, if Shador does not go in the top 3, I feel like you're going to get a team like a Vegas, like a maybe even the Saints, someone still in that top 10 calling and being like, hey, what do we do for this? And they're like, hey, we'll take like a day 2 pick. We'll take this. Like, obviously, you're not going to give up next year's first rounder like what the Bears did for Justin Fields in 2021. But if you do like kind of like what the Niners did Chicago to get Mitch Trubisky, that's kind of funny. The Bears keep screwing up their own drafts.
Yeah.
If you do something like that, then hey, you know what? Move back a bit, and then your player's there. That's my thing. Because my big board has always been like, look, Carter was number 1 just because, look, the Patriots, they need pass rush, even though I do think Keon White's probably poised for, I'm going to say breakout, but I'm not going to say DPOY breakout. I'm just going to say, you know what? He's going to break out to where they say, hey, just go. You do one thing, you're going to do it well, because we all knew there was friction with him and the coaching staff. Because the Patriots pass rush last year, they couldn't get for anyone else. The one player I want to make a point about too is Mason Graham, someone who I always liked coming out from like even last year.
Yeah.
But because I would only go that route if they did not get Milton Williams. If they, that's my only thing with that.
I think you're probably good at Mason Graham at this point, unless like maybe you find out, and obviously again, we hope this isn't the case. You find out Christian Barmore can't play and he's done. I still don't think that Mason Graham would be the right pick, because this draft is so deep on players that can play like that. You can get guys on day 2, but like I would understand it, right? To your point about the quarterbacks, if it's not Cleveland, I don't know that you're going to get a team calling the trade up. I saw a tweet earlier today that was going around. I want to pull it up because I'm going to work this in everywhere now that I can, because I find it funny.
Yes.
We should trade back. There's no good value left where my team is drafting, but I'm sure another team would like to give up assets to move up into this same spot. I feel like is kind of where Patriots fans are at right now. If the Giants and Browns don't like Shador, right? The Patriots aren't taking a quarterback. Jacksonville's not taking a quarterback.
Nope.
The Raiders might, but I would bet they have Will Howard circled. He fits the system. It's a reunion with Chip Kelly. I could see Brady liking him, even though he's an Ohio State guy. So they might say, we'll take Will Howard at 37. We're good. We're not going to move assets here. Jets are not a quarterback team. Carolina's not a quarterback team. I find it tough to believe the Saints are a quarterback team just because of a number of different weird factors. They should be, but they're not. Bears, Niners, and now you're getting into like, you're not going to jump up that far. So I don't know that this massive offer is going to be there. If you can move back 2 or 3 spots and get a minimal return, is that going to be worth it? Like, do you feel better risking Will Campbell or risking Tyler Warren for 3 draft spots if you're getting like a 4th or 5th round pick back? At that point, just take the guy, I would say. Like, you can't hunt value in a draft like this. It's just not there. The real value for the Patriots, if we're going to talk about a trade, because nobody's looking to trade up, is it's going to be cheaper to moving up from 38 back into the first round and getting a player. If they're going to, like, that's the more realistic trade to look at, because now if they're trying to find the value in the board, that's where you get the value in the board.
I only say teams like Vegas because they do have a first-year GM, and I always think of draft day. And I know people don't like the movie. I know people think it's terrible. It's one of those like guilty pleasures for me. I'll watch it every year right before the draft. But there's always the scene where Kevin Costner takes advantage of the Jags GM because, hey, he's a young guy, he's gullible, he's this. That's where I think, hey, doesn't Elliott Wolf try to play that game with John Spytek? But then I think there's also that Brady factor that might avoid it. That's why I say it. And I say the Saints too, because they need a quarterback, but they're not going to get a quarterback because they said, hey, we're going to give Derek Carr $40 million to be our quarterback this year, even though we're probably going to win 6 or 7 games. But no, I do agree with you, because basically after the Saints, there's not another quarterback needy team until you get to the Pittsburgh Steelers. That's pick 21. I do agree with you, though. If a guy like an Emeka Ibuka or a Tech McMillan falls to, 25, 26, 27, you do that. The other thing that crept into my head was, do they do what the Texans did 2 years ago? And I say no, because this team's not ready yet, and I don't want to give up the assets that it would take to, walk away with 2 top 10 picks. That was basically Nick Caserio swinging for the fences, and it paid off tremendously for him. But I don't want to see Elliott Wolf doing that.
Well, and the reason that worked was the Texans had an extra first-round pick because of the Deshaun Watson trade. Like, that's That's a tough one to swing. You'd have to find at least a top 50 pick somewhere else to get close to duplicating that. And I unless you're trading a good player, which this team really can't do right now,
Nope.
it's not going to happen.
No, I just like I said, it was just like that evil voice in the back of my head saying top 10 picks. I'm like, nope, they're not going to do that. But no, like I said earlier, I do think that's a strategy though. If there's a if you go, say if they go Will Campbell at 4, and then you have a guy like an Emeka Ibuka, a Ted McMillan, or even here's another fun one, if they want to take a swing at Jack Sawyer. Mike Vrabel, Ohio State guy, Jack Sawyer, Ohio State guy, linebacker. Tiny bit of a need now if you're trying to get someone new. Where look, everyone's saying Jelani Tavai, Harold Landry's probably going to slot at the end if I had to guess, and then you'll have who else will be other than just to figure out linebacker now because you need someone to replace Bentley. Does Jack Sawyer come in and fulfill that role? There's plenty of options there to where the Patriots could trade back in because even look, Carolina. I know Carolina didn't have a first round pick last year, but they traded back up and. Hopefully, if the Patriots do it too, great. Just hopefully they find a guy who doesn't bring raccoon, and hopefully you don't have to try it in the locker room.
I wanted Xavier Legette. I thought he would have been a fun player here on and off the field. Yeah, the team I look at is the Vikings at 24. So that team needs picks. They only have 5. It's 5 or 6. They only have 5 or 6 picks in this draft. And their second pick after 24 is I think 97. So they could they could use a boost. And you can, it's almost line for line. You can replicate the Kyle Duggar trade, where obviously the Patriots on the other side of it, but 38 and 69 for 24. Now, you also could, if you're willing to move up a little later, there is a trade between the Jags and the Bucks a couple years ago. Now you're talking like probably 28, 29, 30. I did this one in a mock draft a couple weeks ago where it was 38, the current 4th, which is 106, and a future 4th for 28. That's probably the ceiling of where you can make that trade. But again, it's going to cost less to move up this year in general. And on top of that, I think those future picks are going to be valued more this year than they would in an average year. Teams aren't going to want to move them because you're borrowing for a worse draft. But if you're the Patriots, you want to move back up into the first round. Would you rather move, 69? Would you rather move the 3rd or keep the number of top 100 picks you have, but now you have to borrow from next year and you create a pretty big pick gap? You'd be going from 77 to 144, and then you'd be going from 144 to 217. So that's one pick in 200 spots? No. Yeah, kind of. It's like one pick in 200 spots. So I don't know. This is what they do. This is what they're doing right now. They're in that building going through all these different scenarios, but those are kind of the ones I look at.
Yeah. Because I pulled it up right here from the website just because I was curious of all the pictures so we could have the lifetime data. But yeah, if they were to trade 38 and even 77 and I want to say 106 too, but even if you do a 4th next, so say if you do 38, 77, a 4th next year, and you get a 5th or 6th back for this year because they only have 144, and then they weirdly have 217, 220, and 238.
Yeah.
2 of those picks also did not belong to them. 217 was from Tennessee, 238 from the Chargers.
They should not make all 3 of those picks, by the way, whether it's using them to move up or whatever. They don't need to make 3 7th-round picks.
If they can find somewhere to get back in the 170s, 180s range, you can do that.
Yeah, I would think so.
Yeah. But even this year too, I'm just so glad this team doesn't need a quarterback because look, it's so much less stressful with the draft because look, last year we all kind of knew what the direction they were going in. We all knew it was probably going to be Drake, which look, our quarterback's awesome. I love him. But for this year though, and I've seen so many people, the Jalen Milrose, the Dylan Gabriels, those guys of the world, not to say they're bad here, but I feel like a lot of people and a lot of teams treat certain quarterbacks, and I'm going to relate this to another sport that you and I like, because ironically, I actually have the Capitals Bruins game on my TV behind me.
The Bruins still playing?
Yeah, they're still playing. I'm actually on Sunday. I'm driving down to Buffalo to watch them because my uncle's a Sabres fan. He has season tickets, and he invited me. And I've actually never seen the Bruins play live before. But with the point I wanted to make about just goaltending in general, because we all know Jeremy Swayman was 100, I believe it was 110 or 111 was his pick. The point I'm trying to make is you can't treat quarterback development like, he's back. You can't treat quarterback
Sorry,
development.
my computer is dying. I had to plug it in. Sorry about that.
It's all good. I've been there before too. It's like fighting for your life just to get there. You have I've had it before where guests will be like,
yeah,
like my computer's dying. Gotta wrap it up. But no, so the point I wanted to make just with
we're plugged in now,
quarterback
though. We're good.
Oh, awesome. Just the point I wanted to make between the two positions, because it is very similar in a way where they kind of they say, hey, the goalie's kind of the quarterback of the ice, and the quarterback's obviously the quarterback of the field. But goalies take a while to develop to get their game from the college, the junior, even the minors level to the NHL. Meanwhile, with football, I feel like with a lot of quarterbacks, there's those rare exceptions, like, obviously him, number 12. Dak Prescott, Tony Romo's, the guys like that, the Kurt Warners, for example, like those guys are the 1 in a million. But I feel like everyone every year is always trying to find that. Meanwhile, with goalies, you can basically take them, mold them, and do that. Quarterbacks, you kind of can't. I feel like with quarterbacks, once they come out, unless they do something to honestly amaze. And I still look at the Jerry Jones example from 10 years ago where he was hammering for Paxton Lynch, and they said, don't do it. They got a kid in the 4th round instead who I still say this with Dak Prescott. I feel like if he was anywhere else, he would be viewed as one of the better quarterbacks in the league.
Yeah.
But because of where he plays, he just has that magnifying glass on him. Trust me, I do it with a couple of players in hockey as well. But the point I just wanted to make is just look, a lot of these guys need developing. There's a reason for that. They don't need developing because it's just maybe they're not ready to be at the next level. But some guys maybe turn their stuff around. Like, look, obviously Sam Darnold, Geno Smith, that's more Jets being the Jets. But the main point I wanted to make is just, I feel like teams, there's a lot of quarterbacks this year that I feel like will get GMs fired because they're like, I found the next diamond in the rough. Like, how last year after the draft in fantasy football, everyone's like, this guy's going to be the next Puka Nacua. It's like, no, just let these things happen naturally. It's like that's why I related back the QBs and the goalies, where it's just if it happens naturally, great. If they turn out to be a player, great. Usually a guy by day 3, if it doesn't work out, you kind of just, like I said, like we talked about Kevin Harris, dust your hands off, walk away from it. Meanwhile, you take a guy day 1 or day 2, it doesn't pan out, chances are someone's getting fired for it.
Yeah. Well, the thing is with this draft, so I think that was more the case last year, where you have teams running up for guys like J.J. McCarthy because there was this push. Like if Shedeur Sanders falls, that's going to push everybody else down. It's going to push Jackson Dart down. It's going to push Milroe and Will Howard down. And like the guys that you think are fun, toolsy projects, you may be able to draft in a range where it's acceptable to draft a fun, toolsy project. Everybody was telling me all year last year Joe Milton was going to get somebody fired because I think a lot of people thought Joe Milton was going to go in the 4th round. Joe Milton should not have gone in the 4th round. Joe Milton should have gone exactly where he went. That was a great job by the Patriots, identifying him for the player he is, playing the board, all of that. So like I had said this last year that if you're a team like trying to find a backup or you have a starter in place, you're trying to get ahead on the next guy, day 2's for you. If you're a team without a quarterback, like you don't have a clear answer there now or for the future, quarterbacks, or take them first or take them last. Because you either have a guy you believe in and you take that guy, or you don't, in which case you should be bolstering the roster elsewhere to be better prepared when you do add that guy. And that ended up being the case. I think it was the largest gap between quarterback picks in the history of the draft or something like that between J.J. McCarthy and Spencer Rattler, who went in like, I think the 180s, right, to the Saints. You saw that play out. Maybe I don't know that we'll get something similar this year because it is a weird class, but some of those outside of Jackson Dart, who's going to go too high, like, who are the quarterbacks? Like a guy like a Brady Cook, right? Brady Cook should be a 6th or 7th round pick. He's going to be a 6th or 7th round pick in this draft. I don't think teams are going to get over their skis and see guys starting to go and be like, well, we got to get Brady Cook now if we want him. I just don't think this draft is set up like that.
No, this draft is set up in and here's a great example too of the stuff like this. 2011, obviously it was a lockout year. That draft is one of the greatest drafts of all time.
Yeah.
But you had Blaine Gabbert, Christian Ponder, and Jake Locker all go in the 1st round when they should not have gone in the 1st round.
Yeah. And that some of it too is like it's a copycat league. Like Jake Locker, everybody thought he was kind of Aaron Rodgers like, and they're all chasing that. Zach Wilson is another example. Teams trying to chase Patrick Mahomes, or Trey Lance, teams trying to chase Josh Allen like that. Some of it is that too. And that's why I think everybody's kind of torn on Shedeur Sanders this year, because it is like, not that he's necessarily a type like anybody who went last year, but you look at all these teams that, boom, rookie quarterback and success. It's a copycat league. Everybody wants to do that.
Yeah.
You can't do it if the players aren't available. So is it teams trying to talk themselves into Sanders, or are they going to have the discipline to realize last year's great? It would be great to build the team like that, but the player we need isn't there to do it. So we're going to try another strategy instead of forcing, Shedeur Sanders to try to be Bo Nix, or Jackson Dart to try to be Drake May or something like that.
No, I completely agree with you. And I only say those three quarterbacks too, just because of the way it panned out for them. And because if you look at that draft too, like obviously Cam went number 1, but if you look at that draft too, there's just pick after pick after pick, which it's funny with the two of those guys I mentioned with Locker and Gabbert, because in that top 15, there was a third team picking. That third team was the Houston Texans, and they're the ones who walked away with the Hall of Fame defensive end and J.J. Watt.
Yeah. I mean, so that's why, again, to my quarterback, take him first, take him last thing, patience can pay off. It can also be dangerous, because if you're a head coach at GM and you don't have a quarterback, you're not going to win a lot of games, and your job's going to be on the line. But if you can the organization as a whole, I've said this, the NFL is a patience problem, especially when it comes to coaches and quarterbacks.
Yep.
If the organization can be patient, the Lions did this in trading for Jared Goff. The Commanders did a great job building it up for Jaden Daniels. When he stepped in, the Denver Broncos kind of got their backwards because they tried Russell Wilson and it didn't work. You look at what the Niners did. They've still never actually been able to plug the quarterback in, but boy, did they build a hell of a roster. Now it's probably too late. All those guys are old. They missed the window. But at one point, they had built up a great roster for a quarterback to be named later. It was supposed to be Trey Lance. Like, you can be rewarded through patience, but you have to be patient. And this is a league where that's not what happens.
Yeah, because it's not like there's any more, and I know I said Dak Prescott earlier, but Dak Prescott was more just like, hey, he got walked right into the position and he earned it. And ever since then, he's been the starter for the Dallas Cowboys. Meanwhile, you have the Jordan Love situation, which I don't know how often that's going to work anymore. The Aaron Rodgers situation, it's hilarious how Green Bay just literally is 2 Super Bowls between 3 franchise quarterbacks. And now, too, you're starting to see that, too, with teams like Pittsburgh, even, where I'm slowly saying this with Pittsburgh and San Francisco, but I feel like they're dysfunction hidden by good coaching, because I'm slowly starting to think, when do Shanahan and Lynch kind of, there has to be some sort of accountability there because of the window that's gone for them, unless, Mac Jones saves the day somehow. And I only say that because, look, Kyle finally gets his pet project, and Brock Purdy's the other example, too. That's a 1 in a million, because I know everyone says, oh, he's just this and this. I'm like, yeah, you plug in any quarterback with the weapons they had in 22 and 23, it's going to work.
Exactly. I said when Garoppolo got hurt that year, they were going to the conference championship because he's better than Jimmy, but it's the sum of the parts. Shanahan, that conversation should have already started. That conversation should have started about 2 years ago. He should be on borrowed time. He's not, but he should be. Tomlin's a little different. One, the Steelers don't fire coaches. They just don't do that. He also, they're competitive every year. And you made the hockey analogy earlier. This is what the Bruins have been for years. They're competitive. They get to the playoffs. And it's always a watchable product. It's always an entertaining product. Yeah, but at least the Bruins win a couple playoff games.
Oh, I know, but still, let me grief in my sorrows, okay?
No, the Leafs bottomed out a couple years ago.
10 years ago.
I mean, they got Austin Matthews somehow. I'm not as familiar with their history, but it's the over 500 record with Tomlin, right? He keeps them competitive. He keeps it a watchable product. He keeps it a team people can invest in. And every year in January, the fans have to remind themselves, oh, right, this is what this is. But, ownership might be good with that. They're getting national TV games. They're getting some playoff gates. They win the division a good amount. That honestly, in the NFL, that can be enough. So I don't think Tomlin's seat is getting hot as long as he continue. Now, this is good. If they continue the over 500 record this year, it would be one of his finer accomplishments, certainly. And if they go under 500 this year, I think you start to have that conversation. I don't think he's coaching for his job this year specifically. but I don't see him as much of a hot seat guy. It's Shanahan, it's Dayball. The other one, I don't know why more people don't have Stefanski on the hot seat. Hasn't won a playoff game since his first year in 2020. Has been back once since. Oversaw just a complete fumbling, for lack of a better word, of the quarterback position.
Yep.
Just a I don't know. I try to think of a better word and I can't. It's a rigmarole at the quarterback position, whatever you want to call it. Like, those are the hot seat coaches. I think Tomlin's reputation at this point has now. Bill Belichick got fired, so anything can happen. But I think Tomlin at this point has kind of established himself as a guy that will keep the team above water, will keep them a respectable product, and I think that's probably enough for his situation.
So with Tomlin, I only say the dysfunction thing just because they're in that window now where it's like they're playing the patience game with the quarterback. I feel like there's that McAfee thing there next Wednesday, and we all know who McAfee's BFF is. So if the Steelers were to sign a quarterback, what if he just comes out in the jersey next week? And the show was in Pittsburgh too. That's why I say that. And Aaron's just like, yeah, I'm here. Or I think Aaron Rodgers too may do the Joe Flacco, where say if a team, I do that because you don't want people to get hurt. But if a quarterback gets hurt sometime in the summer and pulls a Flacco, where it's like, hey, you want to come here, play with us? If we'll have you. He may do that, but I do think it's either Pittsburgh or retirement for Aaron Rodgers. No, when I was trying to say Pittsburgh, I'm not one of those people calling for Tomlin's head. There's some Steelers fans out there who are, but I feel like he's the coach that you are going to regret it once he is gone.
Yeah.
My hot seat candidates, I think Stefanski's a little lukewarm just because of the 2 Coach of the Year awards that he did get. Zach Taylor is a name, though. I do think they have to make the playoffs this year, otherwise he is out.
Yeah, I would agree with that. It's another hot seat guy, especially they just spent all that money. Like, they got to win now.
Yeah, which they make the video of everyone criticizing them for not spending money when it's like, you literally have never spent this kind of money on players. Your owner is severely cheap. He's the guy that when they went to the Super Bowl, it was, oh crap, this is going to cost me millions of dollars. Not, yay, we're going to the Super Bowl. But the other coach that I want to present to you for the hot seat is Shane Steichen and Chris Ballard in Indianapolis. Did you know that since Chris Ballard took over, the Colts have 0 division titles?
Yeah, that's a good one, especially because so often the coach and Ballard's been through a couple quarterbacks now. He's hung around. Steichen, though, like, the coach is usually tied to the quarterback. And if Anthony Richardson can't beat out Daniel Jones, you're going to need a new quarterback. And do you want the guy that gave you Anthony Richardson picking that quarterback? Probably not. That is, even though, like, I could totally see the Colts ending up somehow with DJ Lagway and literally just hitting reset on the thing. That's another good one too. Yeah, I could see him being on the hot seat.
Yeah, like, I look at that. The other one I look at too, just because I think it is go time for them, is Jonathan Gannon in Arizona. Even though they're a team that I think will be I don't want to say fine, but they're starting to build something there. They're starting to finally put it all together. We'll just see
don't we say that about the Cardinals every year though? And I never thought Gannon was a great coach. I've never been a big believer in him.
I just kind of, they're that team, like, that, like, how do I say this? When you see like a cute puppy in the corner and you're like, and it's like out in the rain and you're like, no, I feel like, oh, like, sorry, like, you kind of get like that soft spot. That's kind of like me with the Cardinals. I'm developing the same thing with the Panthers, but I feel like the difference is Dave Canales is the right guy to lead them. And also they pretty much told Dave Tepper to, like, hey, F off, like, go sit in the corner. Don't just keep your mouth shut and sit in the corner. But no, the biggest one still for hot seats is Brian Daboll, because I look at, like, some other teams.
Yeah.
I looked at some other teams for, like, part of me still. One other one is Raheem Morris, just because I think Atlanta's stupid enough to do that. Arthur Blank's one of those reactionary owners.
Yeah, let's see. I believe in Michael Penix. I think Penix is going to have him good enough that it won't happen.
Oh, I do think Michael Penix will be good. I also think Bijan Robinson is really going to establish himself as a top 5 back in the NFL this year. It's just, hey, I can just see a world where if they miss the playoffs, Arthur Blank does something silly and, like, hey, Terry Fontenot, hey, Raheem Morris, here are your walking papers and leave. Or if I want to say Todd Bowles with Tampa, but I feel like that's just, he's done enough to where, unless Jason, like, wants to do a reset on coach and find his own guy, I don't know. And then the only other one I think of too sometimes is, there's actually not a lot of other people. The only one I've started to say a bit is McDermott, but I feel like Buffalo still is at that point where they're content with, hey, we get these primetime games. We're winning the division. Our fan base is loving it. We're building a new freaking stadium across the street, which I've seen some, weirdly enough, I actually saw a video from Bills sideline reporter Sal Capaccio down in Palm Beach of everything that they said about it was a mix of Sabres talk and Bills talk.
Yeah.
But they're very excited. And if you talk to Bills fans, more than anything else in the Super Bowl, they're just happy to be there. And the fact that they have a quarterback who wants to be there and win there too. So you have all that, but it is always the fun time of year to talk that stuff. But the biggest news to come out of the owners' meeting so far: the teams can wear their alternate uniforms up to 4 times a year.
Yes.
And I think the Patriots do this. Just add one more, 3 times. Don't overkill it. I know everyone's like saying, bring these back full time. No, do it 3 times a year. Do it once in the beginning of the season, once in the middle, once right before Christmas.
Well, there's that. I think the other option is 2 and 2, right? You bring back the Royal 90s blues and you do 2 reds and 2 blues, something like that. What I would really like them to do personally, look, I'd love to see the Flying Elvis shoulder jerseys back. I just don't think that's going to happen. The Road Pat Patriot is such a good jersey. So can we get 2 throwback games at home and 2 on the road? Or the Patriots at one point in their history wore white at home. Maybe you do red throwback twice, and then you mix a white throwback game in there too. That's what they should do to take advantage of it. I don't think they're going to do it 4 times a year. I think it's going to be 3. But if they could add instead of just wearing the reds 3 times, I would absolutely take.
Yeah.
Mix something else in there, either another Pat Patriot throwback or go back to the 90s Royal Blues. I know people want to see the Brady jersey as a throwback. It's too soon. Maybe that's just me not wanting to feel old and admitting that jersey can be a throwback, but you got to give me at least 10 years before we do that, especially with how similar they are relatively to their current jerseys. You got to give me more time before that's a throwback. If anything, give me, and I hated these as a kid, but I've come around on it. Remember when they had the silver alternate?
Yes.
Like the dark silver? Give me a silver. Do it with the jersey they have now. Don't go back to that format for just one, but make a silver version of the jersey they have now and give me like a game or 2 of that. But make it a little bit darker so it's clearly like dark, because it used to just look like the white jerseys got dirty when they played in the snow. But like a silver version of what they have now would be kind of cool.
Exactly. And also, I say this with the red throwback jerseys, but I don't know if they're a blessing or a curse, because the only time they've ever won in them, I've been in the building. So I feel like if anyone at the Patriots is listening to this, like, hey, when you decide what to wear, you can fly me down and just get me tickets to the game so you win. Fun. It's the fun fact I always like to point out, that I was at the only game where they wore the reds and won. But no, I completely agree. Just you change it up. The other one I would love to see them do more often is, I don't know if you remember this game, but in 2000, actually the last time they played at Tampa Bay, they wore their regular jerseys with an all-white pant, because the Buccaneers were in that, like, remember that bright red?
It was color rush.
Yes.
All the jerseys had to be monochromatic. Yeah, I'm good on that. I don't need them to bring that back. Weird.
I just always thought it was a cool look and stuff, because they literally just like took, hey, their regular jersey and their white pants, and they're like, hey, we're going to throw this together. And also when you say the whole color rush monochromatic, my mind just goes to Jags and Titans. It just,
Oh,
a crappy.
That was the NFL peaked at that point. It will never get any better than that. It's been all incorrectly measuring arm lengths from there.
Oh man, that's great. But no, I just say that because you always think at least once a year you get a Marcus Mariota versus Blake Bortles Thursday night primetime game. I think one of those was Derrick Henry's breakout game in 2018, if I'm not mistaken. I think he ran for like almost 200 yards. But no, I think with uniforms, you got to keep it simple. I feel like if the Patriots are going to do anything, we'll find out, I think, in the next 2 to 3, like 2.5 weeks. We'll find out before the draft. Yeah.
If there is something, I would think soon, because they don't want to have the prospect holding the old jersey, right? They want that for marketing and all of that. So, if there's a new alternate, that could come later. I think when they announced they were bringing the Reds back, that was in like June, later June, if I remember correctly. But if it's going to be in a whole new uniform, that's I would think, and I haven't heard anything one way or the other, but if it is coming, I would think sooner rather than later.
Yeah, it's also marketing, and it's also, hey, if we do this right before the draft, people are going to, buy, and which I do like the draft hats this year. I like the little pins that come with it too for each city, how it makes it unique. But for the most part, I'm not saying I'm going to go and rush to buy it, but I'm just saying I'm a fan of it. One last question for you before we go. I know I always ask you this. if there's a player right now on your draft board that might be picked either with 69, 77, or one of the picks on Saturday that Patriot fans, you know what, hey, I don't want to say like a sleeper pick, but a fan, like a player you'd want to have drafted, or if Elliott Wolf came to you and said, Alex, who should we take at 77 or one, what was it, 10 or 106?
106. So late
Like,
day 3. And I mean, it
early day,
depends.
late day
Yeah.
3,
Or
early day
I would
2,
say late day 2,
late day 2,
like
early day 3. My bad.
69, 77. Depends what they do at the top of the draft. Like if they draft Travis Hunter, I'd go differently. But Kyle Williams, the wide receiver from Washington State, he was my sleeper for most of this process. The last kind of week and a half, he's gotten a lot more attention. So I don't know, maybe not a sleeper right now. Later on, Cam Jackson, the defensive tackle from Florida, is a guy I really like for them on day 3. Athletic, big, definitely needs some coaching, but I think that they have really good defensive front technical coaches, which is what he needs. If we want to go really late, because that's where everybody wants me to go, because that's where the fun stuff is.
Yeah.
And if you've read a little bit of my stuff, you might be familiar with this guy is Robbie Oots, the tight end fullback from Alabama, 6'3", 270. The guy is built like he is just a brick wall, and he's powerful. He can block. He can, move well, and he doesn't look out of place with the ball in his hands. He's a tight end at Alabama, but he's going to be a fullback in the NFL. Think like Patrick Ricard type. He's not quite that big, but he's going to play that position the same way. That's kind of been the guy when everybody's like, who's the like niche player that last year was Bub Means, right?
Yeah.
It's this 6th-round wide receiver that I couldn't stop talking about. I think this year that player is Robbie Oots.
There's so many good names in this year's draft too.
My God. If you go down the tight end list, we got, who do we have at tight end? We've got Jake Brenningstool. We've got John Michael Gillenborg. We've got Bryson Nesbitt, Oscar Delp. There's some elite tight end names. Who else is up there? Gunnar Helm is a great tight end name. I got to pull up the full list, but I remember looking at it like back in September and being like, oh, these are tight ends. These guys are all born to be tight ends. Who else? There's a couple of the really good ones I'm missing. I said Brenningstool. Benjamin Urasek is a good one. CJ Drip, Caden Priestcorn, Gavin Bartholomew. It's just great tight end names up and down.
Priestcorn is a guy I've kind of circled too, but I honestly have known more about him through TikTok than football, unfortunately, because his wife always comes up on like as I'm doom scrolling, and like I see him and I'm like right away like, hey, we need a tight end. He seemed to do well, Jackson Dart. So if they want to take a chance on him, because with tight end right now, look, is Austin Hooper a for sure thing? I don't know. It's kind of like Garrett Bradbury at center. I think they're like chances to win at camp, but the only other thing I'll say too is, I still think with wide receiver, there's going to be a move that people don't see coming, whether that's like, does Kendrick Bourne get traded? Does another guy like Kayshon Boutte on the inside looking out? And everyone's expecting to see Jalen Polk, but I still say this, you're not going to give up on a day 2 early pick wide receiver. You're not doing that. He's going to get a second chance to play.
I'm not ruling it out entirely. Like they're going to give him a chance in camp. They're not going to bury him, but new coaching staff, like when it gets time to cut to 53, especially if they add a couple more wide receivers in the draft, they're getting pretty aggressive when it comes to roster turnover, a lot more than I expected. So I'm not ruling anything out at this point.
Oh, I can see it being like an August 29th, 30th cut. I'm not saying it's going to be an April 2nd. Hey, he's off the team unless he does something, unless,
right.
God forbid he were to do something stupid.
Yeah, no, I mean, he'll be here. He'll get a chance. It's just, there's going to be a lot of competition. There's going to be a lot of competition in that room. And Pop Douglas is making the team. Mac Hollins is making the team. Diggs will make the team, but if he's not ready week 1, he gives you, like, you're going to have that roster spot. He's going to be on PUP, right? So you're going to have Mac Hollins. You're going to Pop Douglas.
Baker?
Well, so I was going to say, after those two, you have Polk, Baker, Boutte, Bourne. So you have those 4 guys competing for what will be probably 2 or 3 spots once Bourne comes back. Maybe one of them makes it early, and then when it's time for Diggs to come off PUP gets, they move on.
Yeah. And then the other thing I'll say too is I know a lot of people are saying, oh, Joe Milton can get traded. I will say this, if I'm the Patriots, I'd rather keep him for this year and then, that's a next off-season thing. So, you can have another year because the Patriots, I like their quarterback room this year. Drake May's the starter. Joe Milton's just a second-year guy. He's there to learn and get experience. And then Josh Jobs is just great because, he kind of knows the role of like, hey, there's no expectation to play. And God forbid if there is, he's someone you can rely on. So there's a lot to look forward to and be positive this year. Whether you're covering the team or cheering for the team, is it too early to say it's a good time to be a Pats fan again?
It's going to be a fun year. It's going to be an interesting year. They got to get a left tackle before I'm willing to say that, but they're on the upswing. They're definitely on the upswing.
They definitely are. And you know what? This show's on the upswing. Alex's coverage is on the upswing. 98.5 Sports Hub at Real Alex Barth. Check out all of his stuff. Maybe eventually it'll start bleeding into more stuff about the Red Sox because I know there's big contract came down the line last night I saw, and also too what's his name? Christian Campbell's looking pretty all right for that first couple of games. So you know what? Because I'll say that too, and also because I know as well, I'm still waiting for this from him. But another photo of, because he did this in 2019, he did this in 2024, but a photo of him with confetti after a Boston team won a championship. Just hope the next time it doesn't happen in the city of Boston, meaning aka the Patriots are the next Boston team to win another championship, unless the Celtics do it again.
Yeah, I don't know. Celtics are cruising. I don't know about next, but soon. I think we can say soon.
Exactly. That's why. Hey, this isn't half full, but I'm always a glass half full kind of person.
There you go.
I
like that.
That's how I view life. But anyway, guys, like I said, 98.5 The Sports Hub for all this stuff on radio, online, at Real Alex Barth on X, Twitter. Great draft coverage. Alex, it's been a blast as always getting to talk to you guys. Episode 352 is in the bag. And you know what? It's April, so we're going to keep cruise control to the draft. Have a good night, everybody.